makes me feel like a man.
You want every team to lose any other game? Sorry. Bailey Zappi just put another dime. You know what? Wait. Time out. Are you kidding? That's what I'm gonna try to drop a mic. Welcome back to the Warner Brothas Podcast. Of course, I'm Kyle, joined by my brother Keenan. Listen, well, first of all, Keenan, how are you doing? Before I get into my free agency spiel.
I'm good. NBA free agency is officially here, and there's been small moves. We're waiting for the Paul George domino to really get this thing kicked off. Good day of WNBA basketball. Want to shout out Angel Reese for breaking the record of most consecutive double-doubles in one season. Candace has it over two, but in a single season, the most there. And then Caitlin was one rebound away from a triple-double and a big win for Indiana. First game, they'll be a team over 500 there. So Indiana's turning it around. They're the 8th seed right now. So shout out to both of them. They've played great, but I'm great.
Yeah, I wish the WNBA would get a better TV package. Like, they've got ESPN. They apparently play on CBS, like on Saturdays. But other than that, it's CBS Sports and the channel ION.
Yeah, they play on ION and Amazon Prime.
And Amazon Prime, and I did not even realize like ION was still a channel. Like, that's like one of those random channels that like repeats used to come on back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So how WNBA got mixed up with them, I have no idea. But we need them on strictly Amazon Prime, ESPN, and ABC or CBS, something like that. They just need a better TV deal. But we see them growing by the minute over there. So shouts to them.
I also want to say we need more Mark Jones calling game. I know obviously it's Ryan Ruocco and Rebecca Lobo for their main telecast, and they obviously that's going to be their commentary crew in the finals. I think they signed like a 3 or 4 year deal this before in the offseason. But Mark Jones called the game today, and with the Fever and Mercury game, that was very, very good to hear. So I would love more Mark Jones, and I would love just one time get to like the next Chicago Sky and Fever game. Get me a Mike Breen. That would be phenomenal. That would be amazing. But I know that is very wishful thinking, but give me more Mark Jones. I really enjoyed listening to Mark Jones on this. I think he's one of the best.
Shouts to Mark Jones.
Yeah.
Free agency is really heating up. Technically, It ended as soon as the NBA Finals ended, which, you know, that was a development that just got thrown at us that night, Game 5 of the Celtics and Mavs. And I don't know. I mean, that's similar to the NBA changing their, like, what they call for fouls and everything, how it became much more physical after the All-Star break.
Yep.
All of a sudden, like, I don't know how you can change that. This seems like it's a part of the CBA as far as free agency is concerned. I don't know how you can change it to where the league year starts officially right after the NBA Finals ends. But here we are, because we've seen deals here for the last 2 weeks now. But now it's officially heating up. And it's funny because July 1st, a.k.a. midnight tonight, that used to be the official free agency start. And it's really starting to heat up, like you said, with Paul George and Klay. Those are going to be really the last two dominoes to fall here, because we've already got Harden back to the Clippers. We just got news that KCP goes to the Orlando Magic, which could lead, I think, to Klay going to the Nuggets, possibly. We'll talk about Klay and Paul George here in a sec. But, yeah, we got Harden going back. We got Westbrook going back to the Clippers. Apparently there was a deal for Paul George to go to the Warriors that fell through. I cannot wait to talk about the Warriors just in general. Quietly is kept. I know people expect that he's just going to go back, but LeBron's still a free agent. So we still got dominoes here, and it's very interesting. Sounds like Paul George is taking meetings right now. Sounds like Klay will also be taking meetings today and tomorrow. I can't wait. I mean, this used to be like an annual thing. It seems like our last couple classes have been a little dry as far as star potential goes. So it seems like this is our first one.
It's been more like trades either right before the season or even mid-season. That's been more so taken. Right. We've had Kevin Durant move. We had Damian Lillard move, Drew Holiday, James Harden a couple times. So like there's been a lot of big names who have moved during the season or right before the season, because the Lillard and Drew Holiday happened like kind of right before training camp. So, but free agency has been not lackluster, but it's been more rotational pieces, like a KCP going to Orlando. Like that's not a big move, but it's going to be something that's going to benefit them. They get a champion, a veteran, a good 3-point shooter to help space the floor for Paulo and for Franz. So I think that's going to be a good move for them, but it's more of those moves as of the last few years we've seen.
Yeah. So I mean, there's talks that Philly could possibly get both Paul George and Klay Thompson. I'm not sure where you want to start here, Keenan. There's a variety of places we could start when it pertains to the NBA. Are you more interested in, because Klay and Paul George weave together here? So would you like to start with Paul George and the Clippers side of things? Would you like to start with Klay and the Warriors? Where would you like to start?
We'll start with Paul George and we'll work our way into Klay and the Warriors, and then we'll go from there. Paul George, the way the Clippers are doing business right now is not making sense. Obviously, I mean, I guess they signed Kawhi to his 3-year deal, didn't inform Paul George of that, so he figured out the same time everybody else figured out about that. They can't go into the second apron, which contractually, I believe that's where if over $188 million is when you get into the second apron. If they were to sign Paul George to the deal that he wants to, they want him on a 3-year. Paul George wants a 4-year to be solidified until I believe he's 38. If they were to do that, they'd be like well over $200 million, so they would be well into the second apron. But you have James Harden, who got his 2-year, $70 million extension, which I don't love. They're trying to, I guess, trade Westbrook. Shams reported a few, like sources say, about 30 minutes ago, is what he just said. He reported. But I don't love what the Clippers are doing. I think retaining Paul George over James Harden would have been, for me, what I would have liked. But again, now Paul George is unless they're really willing to go and they're willing to give Paul George 4 years, Paul George should be on the move. I think the Sixers or the Mavs are probably the Sixers are going to be the most likely option for Paul George, and that's going to be the East is going to get a little even more strong on the top tier teams, and I really like that fit if Paul George does go to. He fits really well into a third option. He can get his own, but he also can stretch the floor, play defense at a high level when he's healthy. So, and he's a veteran. So I think that would be a really good place for him.
Yeah, well, let me get this out the way. If Paul George were to go to Philly, it's a perfect fit.
Yes.
We were actually talking about, before we get on here, like Jaylen Brown, like how valuable is he actually? Could he be a number one other places, this or that? And that's the thing with guys like Paul George, Tatum, Kawhi, especially when Kawhi and Paul George were younger. You can kind of put Jaylen or Jason anywhere, right? And Paul George still has a lot of athleticism, still has a lot of his game. So you can still just kind of place him anywhere. Like he can still give you defense, still give you elite shooting. He can handle the ball and play make a little bit. So you could put him anywhere in the league and he's going to make that team better. He's going to raise your floor automatically, right? So he's a perfect fit in Philly. Now, my thing with Paul George, and I know I said this about Klay, but it remains for Paul George because of where they grew up and because of where they went to school. Paul George, obviously, we know he was drafted by Indiana. He then goes to OKC for a couple of years and then finds his way to LA, which is where he wanted to be all along, right? Especially, I can't imagine going from Fresno, LA area to Indiana, right? That's such a culture shock, right? And then you go to OKC. Yeah. So when I heard that the Warriors were a possibility, thinking that makes the most sense. Like, I really can't picture him going to Philly as opposed to Orlando. I could see him in Orlando being a warm weather state, being a young team, being a place where people aren't going to expect a lot from him. Then we hear the Warriors thing, and I'm like, that makes sense. And then we find out, a couple hours ago that, they had a trade in principle to bring Paul George to the Warriors, and the Clippers were just like, nah, we don't want to send you there. Like, really, that was the gist of it. No real reason other than we don't want to send him to Golden State. And we know we can't go to the Lakers. I mean, unless they renounced LeBron. LeBron's technically a free agent. So,
I was going to say, go on. I'll get into that in a moment.
No, I was just going to say, if it's his options are Philly, which I think is the best basketball option. But again, that's weird going from West Coast to a true East Coast team that's going to have winter and all that. It's a rough city. It's not as glamorous as LA, right? It just doesn't make sense for Paul George. But basketball wise, it makes a ton of sense. Lifestyle, maybe not as much, right? Orlando, again, we just said they can still sign him. They still have a ton of cap room. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think it makes a lot of sense as far as a championship window, maybe, but still a really good team that's on the rise. And again, lifestyle that fits Paul George more. You said he's meeting with the Mavs too. Is this true?
See, I think when I was thinking Mavs, I was thinking Klay Thompson because his is the Lakers, Clippers, Mavs, and Sixers. So I think I was thinking Klay when I said that. But the Mavs would be a good option. Obviously, they traded Tim Hardaway Jr. for Quentin Grimes to free up some cap space there. Quentin Grimes, fine player.
Who's PG for sure meeting with? Because I know there was a meeting list.
He's for sure meeting with the 76ers. And other than that, I don't know of a for sure, to be quite honest with you. But I'm going to talk about, since you brought it up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Warriors aspect of it, because Paul George, I think, would have fit perfectly on the Warriors. He fits the timeline of that team. Really, he would have signed a 4-year deal. They really have a 2, maybe 3 if they were to hit on something special, but really a 2-year window with Steph, Draymond, Paul George. So he fits that timeline perfectly. He's as you were just speaking about location, he's in a perfect location to where he's still in California. He knows California. He's been to Golden State plenty of times. Steph is one of the easiest, if not the easiest, superstar to play with because he doesn't demand the ball consistently. He would be able to go there and be a second option again, which he hasn't really had. I mean, he's had it actually, a couple of years ago, but he's been like a second, third option the last few years. This all depends on his injury health and who's there. But overall, I think that Paul George in Golden State would have been great, and I understand a little bit why the Clippers wouldn't want to do it, because then you're just fueling who has been your long-term rival for the last 7-8 years. Obviously, there's the Lakers aspect of it, but we know what Lob City was versus the Warriors, and obviously the come up there and kind of what the Clippers have been to the Warriors. So it makes sense as to why they didn't want to do it from like a pride aspect, but I do think that fit would have been one of the most ideal. That and the 76ers would have been the 2 most ideal fits for Paul George.
So it looks like Paul George is just meeting with Philly, the Clippers, and the Magic. So essentially what I think it's going to come down to, he still has a chance with the Clippers, but I really think Philly's in the driver's seat here by the sounds of it, by the looks of it. So if we get Paul George to Philly, the Sixers automatically are better. I thought they had a pretty good
Do they move
draft.
ahead of the Knicks for you?
See, we'll get into that. We'll get into bridges.
Okay.
I intend to make that direct comparison. I do want to get into Klay and the Warriors too, though.
Yep.
I believe it's been disgusting how they've handled Klay. The Warriors are in the definition of no man's land. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. They gave Wiggins a big deal off of basically a good playoff run. They gave Jordan Peele. They gave Jordan tomato at this point.
Might as well be Jordan.
Tomato at this point. They gave Jordan Poole, Jordan Peele, whatever you want to call him. They gave
Jordan
him
Belford.
Yeah, right. They gave him, the same deal Tyler Hero ended up getting. They gave him a big, extension. Ended up trading him a year later. We know what Jordan Poole couldn't be less valuable right now. All right, so they gave him a deal. They gave Wiggins a deal. They gave Draymond an extension after the punch. And here's Klay, who's been nothing but a great teammate. Torn Achilles, torn ACL, put his body on the line for him, came back. Obviously, he wasn't the same, and they're playing hardball with him. And then we know that they got rid of Chris Paul earlier. They've been trying to work out a deal to where they could trade Chris Paul, get him off the books. They ultimately get him off the books just by waiving him. So now they actually do have room for Klay. They didn't even make an offer to him. There's been no communication since the finals. I think that's disgusting. And I know that the Warriors, they want to make one last run here with Steph and Dre. But I mean, thing is, they've been completely mismanaged since the moment Klay went down in the finals. That franchise has not been the same. Obviously, Steph gets injured, and I believe 2020, right? And then they blow that draft with James Wiseman, and they try to build 2 timelines, which is insane. And look where they are. I mean, they're in absolute no man's land, much like the Lakers, much like the Suns.
They managed to sneak out a chip.
They managed to sneak out a chip.
And hey, that's the greatness of Steph. But like,
it is. But I mean,
out a chip.
I mean, they got we've talked about it the last few weeks. They definitely got injury luck that year. They definitely got injury luck, but they took advantage of their injury luck. But do I think they've been well run outside of that, like after post KD era? No, I think they've almost. I want to call them a joke of a franchise, but I would have, if this were me, and this is someone, Keenan. I know I announced my retirement from the Celtics fandom, right? But I was thinking about it today with this whole Klay thing. Celtics got Jalen and Jason because they got rid of KG and Paul. That was a direct result of them getting rid of KG and Paul. Now, I was still a Celtics fan. Like I said, started teetering in 22. So I was still a fan through that whole Jalen and Jason thing. Hurt my soul to see KG and Pierce go, right? And I asked myself, would I have taken those extra years of KG and Pierce, which would have not been Jason and Jalen? I probably still would have. I probably still would have enjoyed that just as much. Now, the Celtics did an incredible job merging that era into the next era. So if you're the Warriors, if you really don't see yourself going anywhere, but you can still say, hey, we're the Warriors. We live in a warm weather state. Or we play in a warm weather state. We got Steph. We got Draymond. We still got Steve Kerr, right? There's still something there. The problem is with the CBA and this new fucking second apron shit, it's a terrible just CBA setup. I mean, it's more something you'd see in the NFL. We're going to see less and less moves, and we're going to see more of role player movement than we are star movement. Which is cool, but there's absolutely no flexibility when you get over the salary cap, get into the second apron. So that's where teams like Warriors are just severely capped, literally.
Yes, and it's like with the Chris Paul move, they have enough space to get Klay. They have enough space to get Klay on like a 20, like close to what Wiggins got, close to between the Draymond Wiggins number there, and I think there's a 90, probably 7% chance that Klay's gone, and there's maybe just one last ditch effort that he's there. But I don't see it. It's not like it's something that I would bet on, but I think there's like a maybe Steph is able to talk to the management and talk to obviously everyone at Golden State and be like, hey, let's get this guy. Like, there's nothing. We're not getting Paul George in free agency. Let's try to work things out with Klay and try to get him there. I don't know if it would work out, but I think there's probably a 3% chance just because of the familiarity, and obviously the Warriors fans still love Klay regardless. I mean, because the Warriors at this point they're a big trade away. Like the Paul George trade would have put them back in like not true contention like where the Nuggets are, but it would have definitely put them around like they could get to a conference finals and it wouldn't shock you. Like they'd have to play great basketball, fill out the roster properly, but they could get to a conference finals and it wouldn't be the end. Like you wouldn't be baffled by it. But they're in such an interesting spot for like what they're going to do. It's a very tough spot because they don't have much flexibility. The best case scenario for them right now would be can we get Klay and the team to agree to a sign and trade so they can get some sort of assets back for Klay. That would be probably most likely with a team like the Sixers or maybe the Mavericks. And if you were to trade him to like the Mavericks and you could get back, I don't know, Derek Jones Jr. and something else, and then you're able to sign, because then you have like $12 million they can play with, so they could get somebody on the lower tier, like a kind of, I can't even think of who's around that area for money wise that they'd be able to get, but they'd be able to get someone like that and then hope that
fucked.
Steph is. Yeah.
They're fucked. That's the only way I can say it, man. Like
their ceiling right now is a 6th seed in the second round, and that's if Steph's going nuts.
Here's where the Warriors are in the right when it comes to Klay Thompson. Here's where they're in the right. They did offer him, I think, last offseason, some
They
sort
did,
of
yeah.
deal that was, I don't know if it was total 48 million or what it was, but it was definitely something that would be more than what he's going to get on the open market now,
Yep.
right? And like you said, he can get something close to Wiggins. I mean, they should have just paid him. I mean, especially they're delusional if they think they can get into contention. Again, they mismanaged the last previous years, and I know they got a chip, but they mismanaged easily the last 3 years of this. So for them to be in this spot where they could have just, again, I would have just paid him, done the Kobe Bryant deal, right? Kobe could have taken less on that deal. I think it was in 2012, maybe. I can't remember the
Mm-hmm.
year. And, they went into the luxury tax and paid him whatever. That's what the Warriors should have done and just rode this thing out
And
with
they've been
Draymond,
going
Klay.
into the luxury tax for years now, but obviously they were going into the luxury tax when they knew they had probably they were the favorites or one of the three favorites to win a championship every year, but they were willing to go into the luxury tax, especially with the KD years. So it's not like they haven't done it before, but obviously I think they probably think their ceiling with Klay and adding some role players is probably second round. And so they're not willing to do that, which I think me personally, I understand that they're trying to maximize Steph, but I also think that keeping Steph happy would be number one, and I don't see how Steph would be less happy with Klay.
Yeah, I mean, maximize is an interesting term because, I mean, again, they just never gave themselves flexibility. They didn't have to give Wiggins that big of a deal. They didn't have to do that Jordan Poole deal. I mean, I don't know. They kind of walked themselves into this path to where you're going to be it's going to be Steph right now. Like I just made that Kobe comparison. That's what these next few years are going to be with him and Draymond. It's going to be them trying to ball the fuck out like Kobe was in 2013 before he tore his Achilles. And it's for what? Yeah, you can be a 7th seed. You can be a 6th seed. But what are you really going to do? Now, what they do have, I guess you can hope and say, and these are big ifs, you can say, all right, we got this version of Wiggins in the 2022 playoffs. Maybe now Klay's out the way. Maybe now he's a clear cut 2 or 3. Maybe now he can be this player for us.
Hopefully can take his like 15-ish, 20-ish game stretch where he's putting together 22 plus a game. Can he do that for a season? And you really have like a kind of 1-2 punch there with Wiggins being a guy on the outside, and Draymond can really be a roamer and still be all defensive level. Gary Payton II doesn't get injured, so you have a nice defender off the bench. Moses Moody plays decent minutes for you. Trace Jackson-Davis played good minutes for you last year. Like I'm trying to speak all this up, but like that's the hope is your developmental pieces of Trace Jackson-Davis, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody finally take that step properly that they needed to. Trace Jackson-Davis did take a step, but like they take possible. That extra step. There's a world where it is a thing, and if they do get a couple quality veterans added along with that, or they're able to piece together some sort of trade without having to get rid of Kuminga, maybe in the next like week we are talking differently about the Warriors. But right now I'm with you where I'm like 6th seed, second round, 6-game series is what I think their peak is.
Now, if you want to look glass half full, where the Warriors fans, like the diehard Warriors fans who, maybe are a little delusional, and they would have a case here. Their case would be the Warriors ended up with 48 wins last year. What was their win total?
I think it was something around there. Let me look real quick.
So they got nearly to 50 wins, and that was with Draymond not playing maybe a quarter of the season.
Yeah, and he missed 9 games. They were 46-36, and they easily could have won 50 games. Because they were in the most close games last year, and their record was, I think, below 500.
Yeah, they couldn't get it done in the clutch. They were losing nonstop.
So, and Draymond easily could have been a 50-win team last year, and Draymond missed at least 20 games. I can check right now. We're going.
So that's where you're saying, okay, why couldn't we ban Draymond and Klay and all this? And there is a world. There is a world. The thing is, Klay looked so bad at points last year, and it got so contentious with Klay with his playing time and his role. They obviously want him to come back in a reduced role. That's where this is interesting because, KCP took the Klay Thompson spot now in Orlando, and that's one of the spots, right? Okay, Klay could in theory go to Dallas, which I think we even threw out when the when the Warriors lost in the play-in game months ago. I think
Mm-hmm.
we threw out Dallas as an option
And
because he
Klay
would
had
just kind of
30,
sit
played
there.
32 minutes, went 0 of 10 from the floor, 0 of 6 from the. That's his last game as a Warrior was a 0-point effort. Isn't that? I
Potentially.
mean, not that the records are going to ever show that because we don't count playing games as actual stats. So his real
For whatever
last game
reason.
was a 25-point 6-3 game in actual care, but like because we don't really count playing games for some odd reason. So,
I mean,
but
we
like
do.
his
We do in
last
the real world. The
no,
NBA might
we. I
not,
was
but
gonna
we
say
do in the real
we. I was gonna
world.
say we do. The last memory I have of Klay Thompson is 0 points in a Warriors jersey, which is insane. But last year he was even like, I understand he wasn't Klay,
He played
but
better
like
after the break.
in 30 minutes he averaged 18 points and shot 39% from three. You can't
Some
convince me
effective player.
if you brought him off the bench. Your starting five is Draymond, Kuminga, Wiggins, Steph, and if they could get another piece possibly there, and then you have Klay coming off the bench, I just don't understand why that doesn't work
Pochesky
to
would be
the
there
best of
too.
its ability. Oh yeah,
Gonna be there
I
too.
forgot. Brandon Pochemski is another guy who can develop. He played really well last year. I think it was all rookie first team, but yeah. So like that's your starting five, and then off the bench you have Looney, Trace Jackson Davis, or you probably start Looney for a little bit of time maybe. But you have Trace Jackson Davis, you have Klay Thompson, you have Gary Payton, and then you try to get another veteran. That would have been the best case scenario once I figured out this Paul George trade wasn't going to go through. So
Yeah.
I think they should try to get Klay back, and whatever he wants, I would give it to him, and hopefully repair that relationship.
Well, that's the thing, and they'll have all off season to really see like where they are moving forward and assess and see what their top 8 are going to be and who will be traded maybe in the future, this and that. But on the Klay side of things, like I just mentioned, KCP is going to Orlando, so we can take them out. Mavs are still an option. Lakers
Sixers
would
are
be an
still an
option if LeBron took less, but I can't imagine LeBron taking less just for Klay because that's really a lateral move. That's not going to make them a ton better.
So Brian
But
Windhorst did
maybe
report that LeBron has like 3 or 4 guys where he'd be willing to take downwards to like 25 million
it
if
was
they one
Klay
of them
Valancunis.
was Klay.
Yeah.
And so if that is the case, LeBron would take less for it. If not, he's just going to take the max money that he has.
But I think the other player was Paul George, right? Wasn't the top player in that Paul George along with Klay?
I think one of them was Paul George. That's if Paul, and that would have been Paul George taking a discount too for if that was to happen, which she's not doing.
So I could see that happening more so in conjunction if it was Paul and Klay, and maybe LeBron will still take much less just to get Klay over there. So he's meeting with the Lakers. That makes the most sense for Klay. Again, warm weather dude. If he's not going to Orlando, but now that the fact that the Nuggets have opened up and they have a starting 2-guard spot, if you know anything about Klay, Klay's a laid back dude. Klay definitely, probably for sure loves to smoke. Denver would be the perfect place for that. You know what I mean? Like that's definitely like Mountain Bay area that fits Klay's vibe. So I could see a world where he ends up in Denver with by Wednesday or something like that. I could definitely see a world where that ends up happening. And that would be, you got him in the Caldwell Pope role playing off of Jokic. You're gonna get a ton of open threes. So
I think
I could
as
see
of right now, they got rid of Reggie Jackson. They got rid of Caldwell Pope, which is like about 20 million off their books. So they're at 157. So they're over the salary cap, but they're not into the luxury tax. Luxury tax is 170. So if you got Klay on a 3-year, $22-ish million a year deal, you wouldn't even have to get into the luxury tax for it. Off the numbers I'm just quickly looking at, I don't know if that's exactly right, but like depending on how they stack the money. But so I think that you would be able to sign Klay and not even get into the luxury tax, which could be a very interesting thing to do.
Yeah, so I would say Denver's a dark horse. I don't see the Lakers, but I see if that ends up being like a real possibility, I think that would be his first option. That way you don't gotta move far and you're playing with LeBron and AD and you're the
Your
Lakers.
dad
His
calls your
pops
games. You grew
his
up
pops
in the
played for the
Lakers
Lakers.
land.
So Lakers would be all right. I think Denver's a dark horse. I think Lakers are his dream destination. And I think Philly, if they get Paul George, like it looks like they're going to, and they still have room to offer Klay, I think that's a possibility. I would say, man, I don't know. I can see Denver. Like I'm envisioning, I can picture Denver. It seems like it would be Philly, but I would have a hard time believing Klay's going to go from the Bay all the way to Philly, cold in a city that, you know, I'll say this about the Warriors.
Let him have a 0-point game in Philly.
Exactly. Like that's the thing about the Bay, and like I think of Klay first when I think of like the Bay Area. When I think of the Warriors, like yeah, you know, you think of Curry and Draymond maybe a little before Klay, but the vibe of the Bay and you know all that, like Klay is synonymous with that. You know, in the way that Kobe was synonymous with LA, Klay is synonymous with the Bay to me. He's like he might as well be their mascot. Like that's just Klay and the vibe just mesh together. That's why I can see him. It would have to be LA. It would have to be Denver. I would have a hard time seeing him in Philly. But man, if they can really give him real money, and you're telling me it's going to be Maxey, Klay, Embiid, and Paul George, I would like that. And you know, if you want to get into the conversation now, I mean, I want to talk LeBron too. But you know, you mentioned the Knicks. Let's say hypothetically, let's say we wake up tomorrow, and it's Klay and Paul George next to Embiid and Maxey. And you got the Nova Knicks. You get the Nova Knicks a couple hours away with Bridges now. They lost. It looks like they're going to lose Hartenstein. But, you know, they're going to have their core with Bridges and Julius Randle coming back. I can't tell you either way which team I like. I know I can tell you the vibes in New York City will be better than in Philly. It's always going to be more positive in New York than it is Philly. And as soon as you know, one of them, Paul George or Klay, have a nagging injury, you know, maybe the vibes aren't as good. So, you know, Knicks gave up a lot for Bridges. I find that interesting when you take into the fact that Brad Stevens, he didn't give up as much to get Porzingis and Holiday and Derek White combined as what the Knicks gave up for Bridges. I think it's a great addition. I think it gives them flexibility. And I think they are automatically number 2 in the East, depending on what Philly does. Now, again, if it ends up being Paul George and Klay, or even just Paul George, that raises the Philly floor too. We'll have to see what it looks like. You'd still probably take the Knicks and what we've seen in their recent history over Philly, where it's just always a dramatic mess. It's always Embiid getting injured. But just talent-wise, you can't not say it's right there with the Knicks, especially if it's just Paul George. Then they're filling out their roster with who knows what. You know, Morey will give you good role players. That's the thing we do know. They're going to fill out their roster well. But, you know, what building would I want to play in more? Do I want to play, you know, with the Knicks in their front office, which would sound insane if I said that even 5 years ago. Yeah, you'd want to be in the Knicks front office. You'd want to be in the Knicks building rather than Philly. You know, it's always something there. It's always dramatic. It's always excuses. That being said, you get Paul George over there, it enhances your legitimacy even more. And again, Embiid's, you know, it all circles around Embiid's health. It really does. But, you know, you add Paul George to that, then you're adding Embiid and Paul George's health. So you'd feel better about the Knicks' future, but feasibly, the Sixers are right there, barring health. So that's the thing.
The Knicks are the more sure bet. The Knicks are the team that are, right as of right now, the Knicks are clearly the second best team in the East. They obviously were one of the 3-4 best teams. To me, they're clearly the second best with Milwaukee right behind them. I think that Milwaukee, depends on what they do this offseason, if they can get a couple veteran pieces, maybe a Bruce Brown or something like that. But we'll see what Milwaukee will do. The Knicks right now, as I said, are the second best. I think that Philly with Paul George, it would be a toss-up between the both of them, but I'd still lean the Knicks. I think with Klay Thompson and Paul George, the ceiling on the Sixers is higher, but I think the consistency of the Knicks, because you don't know what Klay you're exactly getting. We've never seen him in a new situation. He's not the same athlete he once was. We'll see if he can get out of the shooting kind of up and downs that he was, if he can be a consistent guy. With the fact that you have Embiid, you're going to get more open looks. It's going to feel more like 2018 Klay getting open looks that way rather than 2022 Klay, especially because a lot of the time he was the number one option on the floor because he'd play sometimes opposite minutes of Steph. And then obviously you got Paul George, who very good option you have. As I said earlier, guy can take you off the bounce. He still has athleticism. He can still play defense. He can stretch the floor, shoot close to 40% from three. And then you have Embiid, who has the capabilities of being the best player in the league when healthy. Obviously, it's Jokic, but he has the capabilities to match Jokic on any given night. So the peak potential, and then obviously I didn't even mention Tyrese Maxey, who is just ascending right now and could easily be a top 15 level, top 10-ish level player in the next couple of years if he keeps ascending the way he was, or has been.
Next year, I think he's.
I was going to say next year, truly. Truly. I mean, it's just the
only
reason why it's hard.
He was all NBA worthy this year. It's just a lot of. I mean, we know we talk about all the time how much talent there is in the league, but I mean,
that's why I said the next couple of years is just because there's so much talent ahead of him, and then we have to see obviously where Durant, Steph, and LeBron, if they continue to keep falling, which at some point they're gonna have to, and then who develops.
Where'd you have Maxey in your top 32?
19. Oh no, not 19.
Okay,
21.
Okay, all right.
He was.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it's weird because like anywhere between 23 and like 16-ish is like kind of almost like interchangeable. It depends on the night. Like I could say one night, oh, Maxey's like the 23rd best player in the league. Now then I'm like, oh, he has to be top 50. He's just so good. Like he has to be top 50 because just that's how great the league is right now and the parity within it. But I think that the Knicks are the more consistent bet. The Knicks are the team that I would bet, but I think that Philly would have a higher ceiling if they got Paul George and Paul George and Klay. Paul George and Kawhi, their ceiling would be a championship for sure. But Paul George and Klay, I think their ceiling's higher than New York. But it all depends on what the health of Embiid, the health of Klay, the health of Paul George, and the ascension of Maxey.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it. Maxey's ready right now. Like you got your top two. Paul George automatically raises the floor. It'll be injury with Paul George. I think the thing people are overlooking in this Bridges trade the most, and I mentioned it, is Julius Randle. Like the fact that you've got a bona fide five with those guys, you got the Nova guys, then you add Julius Randle, a shot creator on top of that. Like if you just keep him, that's a weapon. And if you trade him, you're going to get depth back. Like you're good either way if you're the Knicks. So they should, like you said, they're the safer bet to be in the conference finals versus the Celtics. That should be what it is. Philly should be that right there, though. In Milwaukee. And we'll see. We talked about Dame a little bit. Doc said that Dame said he never got into game shape last year. We'll see. You always got a chance with Giannis and Dame.
So 05 Shaq.
Yeah, right.
Just couldn't get into game shape, boys. I mean, he did come out with an album, I think, last summer, which is fire, actually. I love the album, actually. But so I think maybe the album was more on his mind, getting Wayne and Ross and other people on the track and like focusing on that. Maybe he was locked in the booth and couldn't be locked in the gym. So this year now he's got the album. He's locked into the gym again. And
he said he didn't want to work out because he didn't want to get injured before the trade. That seems like you could have done a little more, but hey, we'll see. But yeah, the Bucks are a dark horse. Philly, they're always going to be a question mark. They're always going to be an in-theory team. But again, if they get Paul George and Klay, or even just Paul George, they're still top three. And guess what? They would have been top 3 or 4 last year if Embiid doesn't get hurt. So that's always going to be, again, the question mark and the in-theory.
They were looking like they're top 1 if Embiid doesn't get hurt, like record-wise. I mean, Boston was clearly a better team. Don't get me wrong. But like when Embiid was playing, like they were the best, one of the 3 best teams record-wise in the league when Embiid was playing last year. He was playing just such good basketball. So they're obviously, the ceiling's always conference finals with them with a healthy Embiid. Like it can get there, but we haven't even seen him in the conference finals yet. So, for
sure, and
it's
crazy because I mean I said
you got more to talk about with LeBron after?
What's that? What's that? Sorry,
I was gonna say. Oh no, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you had more to talk about with Embiid, but I was gonna say if not LeBron, it's him.
I was just gonna cap it with the Knicks because I said, want to say 2 years ago. I think it was the 22 season. Maybe it was. I can't remember. But I said it was last season, 23, where I said the Knicks look contenderish. And I said, watch, next year they're going to sneak up a level. And we're going to think of them maybe as a contender. And I said the year after that, meaning this coming season, I'm like, it's going to be on and popping after that. So I think the Knicks got a 3-year window here with these Nova guys let's see. Are they the cursed Knicks? Are they going to get injured again? You got Thibodeau, who is a madman. He's a sicko who played Josh Hart 48 minutes a game in the playoffs. Josh Hart's a sicko because he was all about it too. That's why we love Josh Hart. Now you got Bridges, who is the Iron Man. He's never missed a game, I think, going back to his high school career. So this is literally going to be Thibodeau's dream player here. Like Josh Hart here, like Jimmy Butler of old, which, by the way, low-key, Keenan, that's like the only player I could see the Warriors getting to like make Warriors fans happy is they somehow worked out a trade for Jimmy Butler. I don't know how that would happen. I don't know if Kuminga and Wiggins would be enough, but that's the only thing I could see that could make Warriors fans go like, okay, we lost Klay, but here's something else. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of dominoes to fall even after Paul George and Klay leave. I do think Jimmy Butler will be the next one we talk about. Then we'll have the Olympics. If you want to talk about LeBron, Keenan, very interesting that they got Bronny. I mean, I think we can intersect both stories here. So the Lakers draft Bronny. And I think
hold on, Kyle.
Sure.
I just want to say one thing real quick.
Sure.
Not that this is like shocking news, but Detroit plans to sign Cade to a 5-year, 226 minimum max rookie extension. Not that it's shocking news. I just wanted to report it.
Cool stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna intersect this Bronny with King LeBron James. But so yeah, the Lakers draft Bronny, which I'm gonna be honest, Keenan, this is gonna sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not, but it's gonna sound like a lot of hate. As someone who didn't watch the first or second rounds of the draft, did not make it back in time to watch any of the first round, and the second round was during the day, so I'm at work, and we'd heard rumors, and I think you even brought it up, but we'd heard rumors weeks ago about people taking Bronny in the first round, and I was like, get all the way the fuck out of here with that. So then first round passes, Bronny's not taken. No surprise there. And then, it's like, okay, is he just going to go undrafted and the Lakers sign him? Like that seems likely too, right? But also like maybe one of these teams will try to fuck over the Lakers and just like, I thought it'd been hilarious if the Celtics.
There was a little bit of talk that the Warriors were interested in doing it because I think they like picked 53 or something. So like I think there's a little talk like the Warriors were debating on getting Bronny before the Lakers did. But go on.
Yeah, like dream Messi scenario, it would have been the Celtics drafting Bronny and just like kind of holding him hostage. Like, you coming over here, Bron? You want to play with your son this bad? Come to Boston. I would have loved that. But the Lakers end up getting him. And again, this is going to sound like severe hate, but just from the outside looking in, like when I saw all it felt Make-A-Wish Kid-esque. Like, your dad plays for the Lakers. It's LeBron of all people. We're going to make your dream come true and draft you to the Lakers. Could have drafted literally anybody else, right? And I'm like, that's hate. Whatever. Like, it probably would have been best for Bronny to stay for 2 years in college. Whatever. But then what really solidified it for me, and by the way, no hate, because guess what? We got Thanasis with the Bucks. And once upon a time, my boy J.R. Smith had a free agency where Chris Smith signed to the Knicks, who had probably even less business than Thanasis being in the NBA. At least Thanasis is like 6'8". I think Chris Smith was just like, I couldn't even tell you where he played college. Right? He was just a guard. And so if J.R. Smith can get Chris Smith, of course LeBron James should be able to get Bronny. But, to the Lakers. But, I mean, here's the thing, though. Then I see a graphic of, I think, what would have been USC's best player, who averaged something like 18, 4, and 4. Didn't get drafted. Then you got Bronny over there averaging 5, 2, and 1 or some shit like that. Gets drafted by the Lakers. I mean, look, he's going to get the best coaching available to him. I think he would have anyway, even if he was at USC, because of LeBron and the Lakers. I mean, they're right in LA. I feel like he still could have worked out with Lakers coaches, whether that's legal or not. Who the hell knows? Probably not, but I feel like it still would have happened. But now he's going to be on their G League roster and maybe get some minutes with LA, and that's really cool. Like, don't get me wrong. It's cool as hell that LeBron possibly might stay with the Lakers and get a chance to play with his son, like he said he's always dreamed of doing. Does that make it feel any less Make-A-Wish Kid-esque to me? I'm just telling you how I feel when I saw the news and when I saw the reaction. Because, man, Bronny did not much in college, which, again, no worries. Like, I think it's safe to say if his name was Bronny Anderson, dude doesn't get drafted at all. And he's like not even a thought to get drafted.
I mean, if it was Bronny Anderson, he would have stayed, but I'll get into all my thoughts on it when you're done. You're good.
Yeah, so I say that to say, here we are with LeBron, impending free agency. He opts out yesterday, which Rich Paul let that slip weeks ago that LeBron was going to opt out when he went on his Bronny James PR tour, which that was interesting. My favorite part of all that, Keenan, by the way, was when Rich Paul said that, you know, if we really wanted Bronny to go to the Lakers, we'd force, he said this, Rich Paul said this, y'all can look it up. You can watch the interview. He said this about the Lakers. We would force the Lakers to take him at number 17. This coming from the same people, by the way, who say LeBron has no influence on the front office when it comes to the Lakers and shit like that. Then they say they would force Bronny. Thought that was funny. It's funny, right? But, you know, here he is. He's a free agent. He opts out officially. I'm just saying this. I'll just get it out the way. I could see him being like, y'all drafted my son? Cool, thanks. I'm going to Phoenix to join KD and Booker in this mess, whatever. I could see it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you think LeBron's going to be loyal to them just because he drafted Bronny, just look at the rest of LeBron James' career. This is the same guy who ditched Dwayne Wade. And I know families, you know, family ties are deeper than, you know, friends, of course, especially when that's your son. But if you think LeBron's going to be loyal just because of this Bronny thing, I don't see it. Do I think ultimately he goes back to the Lakers? Probably. That would be like, give it 75%. But could I see LeBron spurning them if they don't get enough players here in the offseason and saying, you know, fuck it, I'm just going to go play with KD and Book? Yeah, I could see that. I could absolutely see LeBron doing that. So, yeah, don't keep your eye on LeBron, right? If it ends up being next Friday and LeBron hasn't signed back with the Lakers, don't be surprised if we get to Olympic time and LeBron still hasn't signed. Don't be surprised. That's all I'm saying. Just given LeBron's history.
So, when it comes to Bronny being drafted, it was a 55th pick. Didn't really make a difference. Like, you're not going to have many 55th. I think, like, one of the best in the last, like, 10, 15 years is Patty Mills, Luis Scola. I mean, last year was, a couple of years ago was Isaiah Wong, Aaron Wiggins. So, like, they're players that...
IT4 was the last pick in the draft, though, too. Isaiah.
No, I'm saying there's definitely you can find something like that. It's just few and far between that you're more so going to find someone past 40. Like, you can find, like, past 40, you're not going to really find those type of players. So taking a guy who did very good in high school. Obviously, the thing that I've mentioned, too, is he did almost die on a court. So shout out to him for even being able to play again. So, like, and that's, like, genuine. Like, shout out to him for being able to play again because, obviously, the cardiac arrest thing was serious. So that's another reason why I felt like he should have stayed because I don't think we really, like, he even got the best chance of himself at USC. I think next year you would have actually got him in a better role. He would have had a full offseason to prepare, get himself into game shape, get himself into playing shape because he really came back in January and he wasn't great. And, of course, I mean, it's going to be hard to be great when your heart matters. Your heart matters a little bit. We see how people come back off like leg injuries and arm injuries or whatever. I mean, your heart kind of matters a little bit. So I think it's super cool that you're going to be able to see a player of LeBron's stature because he's still at, I mean, I had him a top 10 player in the league. At worst, he's top 15. And a top 15 level player, he's not just in the league, kind of like Dirk in his last year, where it was just like kind of a legacy year. He's actually a true player in the league. He might be able to play with his son. So I think that's going to be cool. But you're right. I like in the sense of LeBron's I can see him taking less money if they get exactly what he wants. I could see him signing a full year or a max deal. And then if he was to leave for some reason, as much as it would shock me because of his son, it'd be like, it's LeBron, so anything is possible. So I think whatever with LeBron, you just kind of put it there. But I think I don't like go on the Lakers side of things with LeBron. The Lakers to me are not exactly in the Warriors situation because they have Anthony Davis. I do love the fact that they got Dalton Connect in the draft. I think that's a guy who is a mature rookie. He's played in big moments. He's had to work his way up, obviously. He's a guy who can go get you 30. He's gotten 30 in multiple games in college. Obviously, he's not going to do that really perpetually in the pros, but a 6'6" guy who tries defensively, even though he's not the most athletic, can stretch the floor for you. So he's someone who can give them quality minutes. Maybe not the make or break of a championship level team quality minutes, but he can give you quality minutes throughout the season to help out that team. So I like that pick. And then the Bronny pick is a feel good, make a wish, quote unquote pick. But the Lakers,
how I felt when I see it.
No, I know. It's funny to me. Just make a wish made me laugh. It's funny, but
it was actually, you know what? To be fair, it was more so everyone else's reaction to it.
Yeah,
where like we made his dream
there
come
was like
true.
3 different reactions to it. It was like the people defending the move, like everything, and then people were really calling like the nepotism angle. Like this is like. I've saw people randomly for your real casual people from Vermont fans on Facebook. I read like the NBA. I'm not watching it anymore. It's a travesty that Bronny got drafted. I was like, wait a second, guys. He got drafted at 55. It's one thing if the Lakers had like the 2 pick and they could have taken Alex Sarr or Stephon Castle or one of these great guys that way, like not great, but one of these guys that have extreme potential, and they're like Bronny. Then we're like, what are we doing? But like the 55th pick, okay, whatever.
It was inconsequential. You're exactly right. Is there nepotism to this? Of course there is, and we knew that going back to him going to USC when like they were projecting him, like he would be second round material probably next year too, and the year after that. That's the thing with Bron.
Maybe late first, like maybe if he really develops and becomes something cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm just saying maybe late first, but let's not make it seem like there hasn't been nepotism throughout the entirety of the league. Like I mean,
exactly. Overall, it's a cool ass story. It really is. I don't mean any hate when I say it's a make a wish. That's just the feeling I saw. Like when I saw everyone being like, his dream came true. He's on the Lakers. I'm like, he didn't do shit in college. Like, let's get it straight here. Like, and you're right. He came in because of the cardiac arrest. He came in January. Like, I'm not shitting on Bronny at all. Like,
oh no, absolutely.
If any one of us could be drafted to the Lakers because we had connections, I think any one of us would take that in a heartbeat. We wouldn't. So, shouts to Bronny.
I mean, Kyle, obviously we have a dad that does music. If for some reason we got more music opportunities because dad has connections, sure. what are you going to do with it? But like, sure.
That's the way.
Sure.
That's the way of the world. Like at the end of the day, but like, you know, to especially act like it doesn't happen. Tell me that
Steph Curry's kid's not going to get more opportunity. Listen, Seth Curry's gotten more opportunity because of Steph. They're like, oh, that's the shooter? Okay, not that Seth hasn't earned it, because Seth has played quality basketball and given quality minutes, but like there was a point where Seth was just the 12th or 11th man on the bench and kept getting opportunities. And a little bit, obviously, his work ethic's one, but 2, obviously, Steph matters.
Yeah, no, I mean, Seth earned his keep. Like, he was
absolutely.
Even, I mean, you know,
absolutely.
he got a scholarship to Duke, and he earned his keep because we've seen it. Taylor Griffin was in the NBA with Blake Griffin, and it just didn't work out. Like Seth definitely worked his ass to get to where he is.
Oh,
and
100%.
He's gotten real money out of the NBA, you know. But to say
Seth helped him get the opportunity, but Seth had to make it. That's all.
Yeah, and I don't. You know, if Seth wasn't a quality shooter or quality player, I don't think he would have sniffed the NBA anyway. You know what I mean? I mean, he's not the most athletic player. Seth got there because of Seth. I mean, you know, but, you know, again, like we said with Thanasis and Chris Smith, that happens all the time, and we've probably not even recognized it before. You know, this is because it's LeBron. I think even Keenan, I think Giannis at one point, isn't his other brother on the Bucks G League team too?
Costas,
so at one point,
like that.
At one point, all 3 of them were on the active roster, and no one really batted an eye. People are getting upset about it because it's LeBron James. Now, if you want to have the argument of, you know, is nepotism good or bad? No, it's probably bad. right? Across across society, yeah, that's probably not a good thing. But in this case, in the NBA, it's completely harmless. Uh, Bron's been talking about it for the last 4 years. We knew it was coming. It was a matter of it actually happening. I thought the whole press tour that Rich Paul and Clutch went on was a little unnecessary. That'd have been one thing if he was a first round pick, but it's cool either way. What we thought was going to happen ended up happening. No one. It would have been World War III if anybody else would have drafted Bronny, specifically the Celtics. That would have been my dream scenario, just for content and all that. You know what I mean? That just would have been wild because, man, that would have been a real
he
deal.
was going to play in Australia if someone took him, and Rich Paul was informing people not to take him.
Yeah, that's right. They threatened Australia.
Don't draft him.
That's stuff you hear from a first round pick. That's stuff you hear from John Elway and Jim Kelly and them back in the day when Jim Kelly went and played in the USFL instead of going to the Bills. Ultimately ended up with the Bills, but that's stuff you hear from lottery picks and stuff.
Stuff you hear from NFL quarterbacks,
right? But
I'm not going there.
That's the type of stuff we heard with Caleb Williams about. I would only play here.
Yeah,
here.
You heard the same things a little bit about Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow was fine with going. But people were trying to speculate, is Joe Burrow, because of how Cincinnati is he going to just say, "I'm not going to Cincinnati"? You kidding me? But so that's what you see with those players, not the 55th pick level, and not even probably undrafted level guy in the draft. You don't see it with them much. One thing I want to quickly say before you can get back on that is, the Los Angeles Clippers have announced that Paul George has decided to sign with another team. The 76ers are expected to be the leading suitors, as we speculated here. It's just Shams just reported it, so it's pretty much official that he's not going back to LA.
He's not going back to LA.
And then Eric Gordan has agreed to a deal with the Philadelphia 76ers.
Ooh. Man,
another
so maybe
guy
does that take Klay out of his? Well, I mean, Eric Gordon's probably talking different money for sure, but I'm assuming that's still a 2-year deal for Eric Gordon.
They have not given any details on it yet. At least I haven't seen anything because I'm just looking on Shams' Twitter. But
there's nobody healed.
Yes,
he's gone. So that's a Buddy Hield replacement.
So I'm guessing it's if you get Klay, cool, because then you have multiple shooters and multiple players. But if you don't get Klay, it's, I guess, not the end of the world. You kind of got a Buddy Hield level player, especially, Buddy Hield's better than Eric Gordon, but the way Buddy Hield played last year, for the most part, he's not better than Eric Gordon.
I can make a strong argument for Eric Gordon.
I was the thing with the Buddy Hield has more upside a little bit, just because he has a little bit more defensive upside, not much, but a little bit more. But Eric Gordon's a more consistent player.
Eric Gordon,
he's not bad defensively.
Continuously impresses me.
Just because he's a thicker body and just doesn't shy away from moments. So so the thing with Eric Gordon is I trust him to make a bigger shot than Buddy Hield.
Yeah,
and Buddy Hield had
Buddy Hield largely disappeared last postseason. Aside from that elimination game, he showed up.
And really, it was just the first half, mostly the second quarter, because the second half he didn't do a whole lot. I think especially in the fourth quarter, I think he just started missing shots. But it was really that second quarter that helped get them, I think, out to a lead before whatever. But yeah, so I think Eric Gordon's a good pickup for them. If you don't get Klay Thompson, you've got a guy who can come in, make threes, help stretch the floor, can give you 18 quality minutes a game. He's been in big games, big moments, veteran. So I like that Eric Gordon signing a lot. And then obviously it sounds like, unless there's turns and things change, Paul George is most likely going to the Sixers, as we expected. But so cool. We'll see where Klay goes. Maybe now with that, it may be a Mavs more so thing. Obviously, your dark horse of Denver, which no one's mentioning, but I think could be interesting too. We'll see. I'm going to hop back in. I've got some news.
You got news?
Yes, Kyle, I do have news. So, first, free agent Chris Paul has agreed to a 1-year, $11 million deal to the San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, shit. Wemby got a point guard.
Yeah, so we'll see if that now, obviously, with them trading their 8th pick of Rob Dillingham, that's going to the Timberwolves. That's going to be a very good pick for them. They got him and Terrence Shannon Jr., so 2 smaller guards, but 2 guys who can get a bucket at any point off the bench for them. That's going to be interesting. And then we've got, so with that, and then obviously they have Stephon Castle, a guy who fits them perfectly the way he plays. I don't see them now maybe trading for Trae Young, especially now that they got Chris Paul on that 1 year,
no.
$11 million deal. Maybe they're going to wait until next offseason, see what's out there. But that was one. And then the other one was free agent center Jonas Valancunis has agreed to a 3-year, $30 million deal with the Washington Wizards. And that I find interesting because they have 3 picks. They got Alex Sarr, who was a big. Obviously, they got Bub Carrington, who was a guard. And then they got, shout out to, I believe Miami Basketball, my U guy, Keyshawn George. They got him. He is a guard as well. So between those 3, they did get a big in Alex Sarr at number 2. So clearly he's going to have minutes, but they may want to look at having him at the 4.
Sarr's not really a true big, though. Sarr,
no, he's like, no, he can play a 4, so he's 6'11" and a half.
He can even play the 3, but yeah, I would have never guessed.
Valancunis, it just didn't. That doesn't. So they got like a true big. Maybe they want to play Sarr more at that, but that's going to be a big lineup because they'll have probably Valancunis, Sarr, and Kuzma be your front court. That's a bigger lineup, and then obviously you're going to have Bub Carrington, Jordan Poole, Keyshawn George. Depending on he plays, I think he could probably get around 18 to 20 minutes because he's a raw product, but he's definitely someone who has talent and can play at the next level. So we'll see, but those are the two latest in Woj bombs that I've seen. Otherwise, there hasn't been too much. Obviously, just the Paul George news with the other stuff, but so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Trae Young's name because the deal that's gone under the radar that really caught my eye was Dejounte to the Pelicans. For a few reasons. I feel like the Pelicans didn't give much up for him. Secondly, I thought...
Which is weird because, like, I was talking with my Lakers fan, Corey. This will segue into what you're talking about, too. But, like, they want, from the Lakers, they wanted Austin Reeves in 2 firsts. And they weren't budging off of that. And then they get a pick swap in Larry Nance for Dejounte. So, like...
And Dyson Daniels, I believe.
And Dyson, yeah. But, like, I just don't see how that equates. But anyways, go on.
I mean, I will say Dyson Daniels is an intriguing prospect for sure, but I feel like you could have, like you said, like if you're asking that from the Lakers, why wouldn't you shop that around the league? Me personally, I've always loved Dejounte as a player, loved him coming out of Washington, thought he was, loved his just upside as a prospect, right? Now, I'm not saying I like him better than Trae Young. Obviously, Trae Young he's not your one guy, but he's still like a franchise player type. Like he can still change your franchise. So I thought Atlanta was going to be in the business of trading Trae Young, getting as much pieces back, and then going maybe with Dejounte. And if you want to trade Dejounte and start all over, fine. But Dejounte's someone, he's kind of plug and play too. You can play him at the 1 or the 2. Now the Pelicans get him. Now you're starting all over. You got Ricochet, who I don't even know where he'd be drafted on a regular year, and he was the number 1 pick. And you got Trae Young. Are you going to?
He's got a lot of like. He's polished, but like his game's interesting. So it'll be interesting to see like what he can develop into.
For sure.
But he's got a lot of facets to his game.
For sure. But, to make a long story less long here, I mean, I just don't really understand what's going on in Atlanta. I don't really know. Like, are they going to keep Trae? Are they trading Trae? No idea.
I would trade him.
For the Pelicans, however, I think that's amazing that they got Dejounte Murray. This is already a strong defensive team, and you got even better defensively. You're going to have Dejounte and Herb Jones in the backcourt. Look out. Like, I really do think, Keenan, quietly, the Pelicans made themselves a dark horse contender. And I think they were
Do you think they trade Brandon Ingram?
I think so. I think David Griffin made that pretty clear. So if that's the case, if you're trading Brandon Ingram and you get something, whether it's spare parts back and you're uploading with depth or upgrading with depth, sorry. I don't know. I think they're going to be better no matter what. And I think as long as Zion stays healthy, which will forever be the question mark,
yes.
I really do think they're dark horse here. And if they happen to keep Brandon Ingram and just say, we'll ride it out to the trade deadline, you can do much worse than Zion, Brandon Ingram, Dejounte Murray, and Herb Jones. And then you've got a strong bench already. You got Alvarado there. You've got
Trey Murphy the third.
Who?
And Trey Murphy.
Trey Murphy, exactly. They've got a squad. Like I really do, Keenan, and we've seen it with the West. We've just seen how much turnover there is constantly in the West. You get a couple injuries here. There's no reason why the Pelicans can't sneak into that top 4, top 3, especially if we see the Zion that we saw close.
They were there for most of the year last year too.
Yeah,
top 4 or 5.
Exactly. So I don't know if you're a Pelicans fan and you're, you don't really have to worry about is does Zion want to be here? Like you're going to have Zion for sure, probably over the next 3 years, given something catastrophic. You got a real piece in Brandon Ingram. You can probably swap him for an adequate player, or if not a few players, depending. Again, maybe you iron out your bench with that. Maybe you get a 3 that replicates him right back. I don't know, but they're going to get something quality back. And I don't know. I think they're in a great spot.
Where do you think, what would you think the deal would be for Brandon Ingram? Like, where do you think would be a good spot for him off the top of your head?
That's what sucks about this CBA, Keenan, is we can't even come up with like trades that make sense anymore. Like there's so many restrictions. So it would almost do nothing for me. Like in general, where would I want to see Brandon Ingram's career?
Yeah, no, I more so mean just like not the logistics and things like that. I just mean like something that would make sense that could happen. Like that could be like in the works. Like obviously it wouldn't be like, hey, trade him to Boston what? Like
Atlanta would have made sense. That deal, Dejounte for Brandon Ingram, that would have made a lot of sense. I think that made a ton of sense, even though Ricochet's a wing too. But, somewhere like that, you want him on an emerging team like the Pelicans. I think he just seems to be tough to play with. He didn't get run last year on Team USA. That was a whole thing. He didn't really come up clutch for the Pelicans in this playoff run. Which, whatever. I mean, he's still an offensive player, like a strong offensive player, probably more so in the DeMar DeRozan range. He doesn't shoot as many threes as you'd like him to. He kind of lives in the mid-range. So where would I like him to go? I mean, I don't know. I really think you can't.
So I got a couple options that I was thinking of. So speaking of DeMar DeRozan, I think that if on the Pelican side of things, if you could trade with the Bulls, because the Bulls are obviously a team that's looking to kind of retool and revamp. Obviously, I don't know if you get Lonzo back. I think that would be I think that could be something that was very good for them. Obviously, Zach LaVine's interesting, but I mean, with CJ McCollum, it'd kind of also be like, how much could you get within there, especially because you just got DeJounte Murray. Another team.
LaVine has almost no market on top of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what I saw too, but that LaVine doesn't have really too much of a market. But the team that really stood out to me initially was the Pacers. Trading with the Pelicans, I think that Brandon Ingram could fit in with the Pacers roster. I mean, you would probably
I can see that.
Because you get a wing score. Like obviously you have Siakam, who is more of a low post guy, but he can kind of do it all. He can face up, he can shoot threes if need be, but he's not the guy who's really going to break you down from the outside. He's really going to be more 18 and in, kind of breaking you down there, but then he can step out if need be. You've got Halliburton, who, depending on what Halliburton you get, he's someone who either wants to push the pace, and then you would get a guy in Brandon Ingram that when things do slow down, you have a guy who can go get you a bucket one-on-one on the outside. So I think the Pacers would be a pretty good spot for him, and I think the Pelicans could get back a few pieces. I know they just signed Obi Top into a 4-year, like $60 million deal. You can look at someone like Nembhard, look at someone maybe Benedict Mathurin if you could possibly sneak that, Aaron Nesmith. So they have guys there that they could possibly flip, or maybe, I know his name gets thrown around every year, but Miles Turner, obviously you just lost Jonas Valancunis, someone like Miles Turner could fit in there too. So I think the Pacers would be an interesting spot for him, but that's just me throwing out, just without little thought, just throwing out a team.
Excuse me. Here's the thing with that. I don't see them getting rid of Miles Turner, especially after years of, he's definitely going to be traded, never got traded, and then he was one of their better players all postseason.
He might be the person I've heard getting traded the most. I've never seen it like every year.
Right. I like the thought of Brandon Ingram next to Siakam on defense. Thing is, I don't think he fits the Pacers offensively because
He does slow
I
things
think
down a
Siakam
little
is
bit.
their guy for when stuff breaks down, that they get stuff in the
Yeah.
half court. We've seen
Sure.
Siakam be very capable of that.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not, when it's all fast paced, what do they want to do? They want to either get to the rim or they want to bomb threes. Ingram's a
Mm-hmm.
ball stopper.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, we haven't seen the 3-point proficiency. Like he just doesn't. He can make them. He just doesn't want to shoot them. Right? He's not going to shoot that many threes. So if they could turn him into like a version of, all right, we're going to shoot threes or we're going to get to the rim, he's definitely intriguing. He's intriguing no matter what. I just don't know where he fits, and I really, truly just don't know what teams can and cannot trade for him.
Yeah.
My guess
It'd
would
have
be
to be
he's gonna.
either. Go on.
I was gonna say my guess would be he's gonna go to a up and coming type team, a team that's on the outside looking in on the playoffs. Um, you mentioned Chicago, maybe them because they like to be middle of the pack anyway. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
you could get something for him there, but I don't
Maybe.
know.
I mean, depending on how Miami feels about things, maybe after they trade for, if they trade Jimmy Butler, maybe they could move on for something there because they do play a little slower style. Or then it could be, or then you would throw them at a team like them, just naming a couple styles of teams like the Nets, the Raptors, like where you're trading more so for a few pieces. I don't think the Raptors as much, honestly, but like just a team like that where you're really throwing him more there to get the pieces back, and he's kind of just like a really good scorer, 25-point a game scorer on a not great team kind of guy.
I would have said the Nets prior, and Nets would have been perfect, but they got their first pick back or their first round pick back, and they're
Yep.
very obviously looking to tank.
Oh
So
no,
they
they're
don't want
very obviously looking to go down. Houston, maybe.
maybe
Not saying
maybe there's a lot of wing depth there. I'll be interested to see where he
Mhm.
goes. Like thinking back on it though, that would have been the perfect swap. Get him to Atlanta. You get Dejounte back. Okay, now you got Trae Young and Brandon Ingram on top of the number one pick. That would have made a lot of sense. But who
Mhm.
knows if they could financially do it with all these dumbass rules now. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, I would say we can't, as I say, there's not too much more. We obviously can speculate, but there's not a whole lot more that we can really discuss about free agency until things drop.
Yeah. No, I've
So,
got nothing on the NBA right now. Obviously the
mhm.
WNBA is heating up. It's been a great season. We've been touching on it, every time we've been recording. UFC 303 was last night.
Yeah, how
International
was that?
fight International Fight Week, which is supposed to be pretty much their biggest Vegas card. Outside of like 300 was obviously the big one this year. Incredible event headlined by Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you heard the story. Conor McGregor couldn't go. Michael Chandler. They had to cancel
Mm-hmm.
that fight. Insert Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prohashka. Keenan, I'm going to make this football equivalent to you, Keenan. That would be like the Seahawks Niners rivalry back in the day. Like
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed a good game, guaranteed banger. Like just what you're getting with this fight, right? They actually fought in New York back in November. Pereira won via knockout. Cool. Yuri actually lives like a straight up samurai style, like lifestyle. Like dude actually lives like that life, like lives in the woods, like is off to himself. Did the whole Aaron Rodgers dungeon thing, but like multiple times, right? Like he's
Mm-hmm.
that type of dude, and took that loss to Pajeda in November way to heart, like way to heart. Like was talking about this championship fight, like I was born for this, I'm ready for this, like stuff you want to hear from someone who took a devastating loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pajeda, though, I described him to you when they made this fight. I think a couple weeks ago when they officially made this the championship fight in place of McGregor. Said he's the closest thing to Mike Tyson since Tyson across any sport, and that's true. Uh, and I tweeted last night as they're walking out. I said if Pereira knocks him out with all Yuri's gonna have the fight of his life tonight. So I thought he was gonna change his style, which he did a little bit. But like if Pereira knocks him out again, because he's the number one contender, like this, he is the other guy in the light heavyweight division. This is
Yep.
after Pereira moved up from middleweight too. Like if Pereira knocks him out in this short a span, like he's gonna be on track to be the biggest star since Connor in this sport. And Keenan, that's exactly what happened. Uh, this dude, look, Pereira's winning, right? Like striking is Projaca's. I wish I could describe Yuri to you. You don't watch enough fights, but like he has such a unique style, right? Like he's gonna strike, he's gonna throw, he's gonna bang, he's got power, but like he does nothing traditional. Like he's doing it in the least traditional ways, okay? Whereas Pereira is a former kickboxer. He is as technical as you could be, and on top of that, again, has one punch, and as we found out last night, one kick power. All right, so for the most part, he's winning the first round, Pereira against Projaca. And, it was slow developing, started getting more action at the end. And as the bell rings in the first round, Pereira drops him with a left hook. And if that round lasted another 5 to 10 seconds, he would have won it right there. So his very last punch, his very last strike of the first round, Pereira drops him.
Just say that last sentence again.
Sorry for the technical difficulties there. But what I'm trying to say is, hey, if you're not a fan of the UFC right now, hop on because there's a bona fide star, and that's on top of all the other bona fide stars they have. But this guy's going to ascend to a level where he's going to be a household name like Conor. And I know everyone was excited about 303 to see Conor once again. But, man, you might get 1 or 2 Conor fights. Like, I would not be surprised if he retires after that Michael Chandler fight when it happens. You're not going to get the same quality McGregor you would have got, 8 years ago. This is not going to happen. So, even though that was going to be the highest gate with Conor McGregor, it was going to be the highest selling pay-per-view, the gate, everything cool. But this guy's actually going to bring you all the entertainment you want from a Conor McGregor. Might not get the trash talk. You might not get all the extra stuff, but you will get highlights. That's for sure. So,
yeah. All right. I love it. I love to learn stuff. So that wasn't boring to me at all. I actually enjoyed it. We definitely need to, though. I know we tried to line it up. We need to get Trent on because then you guys can have your full. Yeah, obviously we can talk basketball, of course, and then you guys can have the floor. I'll be here. Don't worry. But you guys can have the floor and get your UFC talk, and you can have that dialogue back and forth. It's the same way some.
I was going to say, let me ask you this: do you have any UFC questions as someone who's just a bystander to all this?
As of right now, I don't. Well, this was the Warner Brothas Podcast. Keenan, of course, joined with Kyle on TikTok, obviously YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are viewing/listening to this. We've been posting a touch more on Facebook, or really it's Instagram, really it's TikTok. The places that you can catch us for sure, all Warner Brothas Podcast. We appreciate all of you. And we'll see you.
Like a man.